September 5th, 1991. Garden Lodge. Freddie Mercury turned 45 on a day that everyone present understood, without anyone stating it directly, would almost certainly be his final birthday. An understanding that shaped the entire quality of the small gathering Mary Austin and Jim Hutton had organized across the preceding days. A celebration deliberately scaled to Freddie's diminished capacity, while still attempting to honor the occasion with the specific warmth and intimacy that had characterized every previous birthday across his life. The gathering was small, by any measure applicable to a man whose birthdays had, across previous decades, sometimes involved elaborate parties attended by dozens of people. Limited on this particular September afternoon to perhaps a dozen of the people closest to him. Jim Hutton, Mary Austin, Peter Freestone, Joe Finelli, and a small number of additional close friends gathered in the sitting room where Freddie could remain comfortable while still participating in whatever brief celebration his condition allowed. Freddie had been able, according to accounts from people present, to sit upright for the gathering's duration, a specific and hard-won capacity that had required careful management of his medication schedule across the preceding days to ensure he possessed sufficient strength for even this modest celebration, and he had, according to multiple accounts. Insisted on being dressed in something other than his usual sickroom attire for the occasion, a specific act of dignity and self-presentation that those present have described as characteristically Freddie, even in the midst of his most severe physical decline. The small cake, prepared according to Freddie's specific request by Joe Finelli, who had served across many years as both cook and close friend within Freddie's household, was brought into the sitting room as the gathering's central moment, and those present have described a specific hush settling over the room as the cake approached, everyone understanding, without anyone voicing it, the particular weight this ordinary birthday ritual now carried, given the circumstances. Mary Austin has offered, in the limited interviews where this particular celebration has come up, the general observation that the room's mood during this specific moment combined genuine warmth with an unmistakable and carefully unaddressed undercurrent of grief, everyone present maintaining through what she has characterized as a kind of collective, unspoken agreement. An atmosphere of celebration rather than mourning, even while privately understanding exactly what made this particular candle lighting different from every one that had preceded it across Freddie's life. Jim Hutton, according to the account that has reached researchers through a combination of Jim's own limited later testimony and secondhand accounts from other people present that day, was positioned closest to Freddie during this specific moment, seated on the arm of Freddie's chair or kneeling beside it, close enough that whatever passed between them during the candle lighting itself would have been audible to almost no one else in the room. As the candles were lit, according to the account that has proven most consistent among the fragmentary testimony available, Freddie leaned slightly toward Jim, according to Jim's own later characterization, offered in the limited interviews where this specific moment has come up, and said something quietly enough that even people standing relatively nearby could not make out the specific words, a private exchange occurring within the larger semi-public celebration. Addressed to exactly one person while everyone else present understood, from the specific body language and the deliberate lowering of Freddie's voice, that this was not intended for broader hearing. Jim has offered, across the limited testimony he provided before his own death in 2010, only a general characterization of what Freddie said, rather than any claimed precise transcription, describing it as something that acknowledged, with unusual directness, even by the standards of their relationship's typical emotional openness, the specific gratitude Freddie felt for Jim's presence and care across what both men understood to be a genuinely difficult final period, though Jim has also indicated, in the fragments of testimony that have survived, that the whispered comment carried a specific additional quality beyond simple gratitude, something Jim has characterized, without ever providing full specific detail. as a kind of private joke or reference that only the two of them would have fully understood. A moment of genuine levity threaded through the conversation's underlying gravity, in a way that Jim apparently found particularly meaningful, precisely because it demonstrated Freddie's continued capacity for humor, even in the midst of everything else the day represented. The candles, according to every account of this celebration, were blown out with what witnesses have described as considerable effort, Freddie's diminished lung capacity making even this simple physical act require visible concentration and support. Jim reportedly assisting slightly with the final candle, when Freddie's own breath proved insufficient to extinguish it entirely alone. A small physical collaboration that those present have described as carrying its own quiet significance, the specific and practical reality of Freddie's illness intruding, even in this deliberately celebratory moment, into an ordinary ritual that would, in any previous year of his life, have required no assistance whatsoever. Mary Austin has described the room's collective reaction to this moment, the slight assistance with the final candle, as a specific and carefully managed emotional balance, everyone present understanding the genuine difficulty of what they were witnessing while simultaneously maintaining, through what she has characterized as considerable collective effort, the celebratory tone that Freddie himself had apparently insisted upon for the occasion, several accounts confirming that Freddie had explicitly requested, in the days leading up to his birthday, that the gathering avoid any excessive sentimentality or visible grief, wanting instead, according to these accounts, an atmosphere that felt as close as possible to an ordinary celebration despite everyone's shared understanding of the circumstances. What Freddie whispered to Jim during the candle lighting has never been more precisely specified in any account that has reached researchers, Jim having maintained, across the years between this celebration and his own death 19 years later, a specific and consistent discretion regarding the comment's exact content even while confirming, repeatedly and without significant variation, that the moment itself occurred and that it carried genuine significance within his own private understanding of that particular afternoon. This pattern of confirmed occurrence, paired with permanently withheld specific content mirrors in its broader structure several other similarly documented fragments of testimony from Freddie's final months. Various people across his closest circle apparently receiving distinct private communications during this period that they have subsequently chosen to acknowledge in general terms while protecting their precise substance, a pattern that, taken across the accumulated body of similar accounts, suggests something coherent about how Freddie apparently used whatever specific moments of clarity and strength remained available to him during his final months, offering carefully individualized private acknowledgments to the specific people closest to him rather than any single collective statement intended for broader distribution or eventual public disclosure. The birthday celebration continued, according to available accounts, for a relatively brief period following the cake and candles, Freddie's limited stamina requiring that the gathering conclude considerably earlier than any of his previous birthday celebrations might have, though those present have described the remaining time as genuinely warm, filled with conversation and, according to several accounts, occasional laughter that those present found particularly meaningful precisely because it demonstrated Freddie's continued capacity for genuine enjoyment even within the severe physical constraints his illness had imposed. Gifts were exchanged, according to various accounts, though the specific nature of what Freddie received that particular year has never been comprehensively documented. Several accounts mentioning small personal items rather than anything elaborate, a pattern consistent with the broader scaling down of the entire occasion to match both Freddie's physical limitations and, according to some interpretations, a specific and deliberate shift in what actually mattered to him during this final period of his life, material gifts apparently carrying considerably less significance than the simple continued presence of the specific people he had gathered around him for what everyone present understood without needing to state it aloud, would be his final birthday celebration. Freddie Mercury died 70 days later, on the 24th of November, 1991, and Jim Hutton has said, across the limited interviews he gave before his own death, that he thought often, across the intervening weeks between the birthday and Freddie's actual death, about the specific whispered comment Freddie had offered during the candle lighting, describing it as one of the small number of private moments from those final months that he found himself returning to repeatedly, a specific comfort he apparently drew from the memory precisely because of the particular combination of genuine tenderness and characteristic humor it represented, evidence in Jim's own understanding that Freddie had remained, even in his most severely diminished physical state, recognizably and completely himself. This detail, Jim's specific emphasis on the whispered comment's combination of gravity and levity, rather than characterizing it as purely somber or purely sentimental, offers a particular and meaningful counterpoint to some of the more uniformly grief-focused accounts that have characterized much of the broader documented testimony from Freddie's final months, suggesting that even within the genuine and unavoidable sadness of watching someone approach death, moments of authentic humor and connection continued to occur, evidence that Freddie's essential personality, his specific and well-documented capacity for wit, even in the most difficult circumstances, persisted through nearly the entirety of his illness rather than being entirely subsumed by its physical demands. The specific significance of this particular birthday, occurring just under 3 months before Freddie's death, has been noted by biographers and researchers who have studied the broader chronology of his final year, situating it within a period during which Freddie had, according to multiple separate accounts, begun the specific and deliberate process of settling various pieces of unfinished personal business, distributing private acknowledgments and instructions among the people closest to him, in a pattern that this particular birthday whisper, if accurately characterized by the fragmentary testimony available, would fit coherently alongside. Whether the specific comment Freddie offered Jim during the candle lighting connected to any of these other documented instances of final month private communication, whether it represented a similarly weighted piece of deliberate acknowledgement or simply a spontaneous moment of genuine affection and humor arising naturally from the occasion itself, remains entirely unknown. Protected permanently by Jim Hutton's consistent discretion during his own remaining 19 years of life, and now, following his 2010 death, existing only as a specific and quietly meaningful fragment within the broader historical record of Freddie Mercury's final birthday, a private whisper exchanged between two people who loved each other, witnessed by no one else with sufficient clarity to ever fully reconstruct it, standing today as one more small and permanently protected piece of testimony from the final months of a man who apparently used whatever time and strength remained to him to make sure the people closest to him understood, in whatever specific words he chose for each of them individually, exactly how much they had meant to him across however many years they had actually shared together.